Once a week this month of August, I will be sharing preservation projects that I did throughout the week and joining Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead. And I'm kicking this week off with beef liver. And we just picked up our half a beef along with chicken and a whole hog. And I was putting more into the freezer and decided I needed to do something with it. And I've seen people do freeze dried beef liver, but they always cooked it raw. And I decided to do something a little different. My next video actually coming out is how I freeze dried the beef liver, but I'm powdering it to be able to use in fall cooking for soups and in adding it to things like smoothies. But that was my first big project. My next project also has to do with getting that half a beef, and that was rendering some tallow. And I have not been a good steward of using the tallow and lard I've rendered over the last year, so I need to work on definitely using that up. But one of my favorite ways to use it right now currently is to have a sheet pan sliced of potatoes and just putting some tallow on it. And then as it cooks in the oven, just flipping it. It turns into like some homemade potato chips, and it's really delicious. The next thing I decided to do is I've freeze dried my herbs, and I love freeze drying herbs, but I decided to do my own infused oil after seeing it at a local grocery store. So I took some of my lemon thyme that I love so much with cooking chicken, and I decided to steep some of the lemon thyme in some regular olive oil, and in a couple weeks I will strain that out and the herbs will go into the broth bucket, and then the oil I can put into a container to use in cooking. Next up is an almond flour cookie recipe, and I make homemade almond milk because we're not huge milk drinkers. And I started last winter actually freeze drying the almond pulp, and I had yet to use it in any sort of way to try to, and I hadn't used it. So I found a couple recipes, tried a couple things, and these cookies were super simple with ingredients, but also it worked wonderfully with the freeze dried almond pulp. And I think I did 2 cups of almond pulp, 6 tablespoons of butter, 6 tablespoons of maple syrup, and then I think it was a half a teaspoon of salt, some cinnamon, and vanilla. And you just mix this up. I just mixed it up with my hands. It comes together here, and it kind of is a sticky dough, but you just kind of I'll leave the recipe in the link to make sure I have all the measurements correctly, but it is, you just mix it with your hands. It is kind of a wet, sticky dough, but it forms pretty easily in your hands. And you can make these cookies whatever size you want. I just thought that they would be good with like a little side of tea or a little dessert with lunch for the children. And I'm just shaping them. And then it's a thumbprint cookie, so I'm just putting some jam in there. This one I did some fig jam, but I've made these over the last week quite a few times because the kids eat them as fast as I can make them. So I'm really happy to find a recipe that uses my freeze-dried almond pulp, but it's a low sugar recipe too, and you can add whatever jelly you want in here. I've done blackberry this last week. I did some cherry, and these ones specifically are frog jam. It's so good. It has fig, raspberry, orange, and ginger. It's really delicious. You just place them on a cookie sheet. I do suggest, even though there's butter in there, I do suggest putting some kind of parchment or a silicone baking mat down, and then fill them with whatever little jelly you want. It's about a half a teaspoon, I'd say, in each of these small cookies. We went through those ones so fast. I had to make another batch, and this batch was a black raspberry jam bar. Another no waste project I did this week is I bought this avocado salsa recently from Costco, and I have some children that really love salsa, so we thought we would like this. and only about half of us do. So what I'm doing is I'm going ahead and just putting it straight into containers, and so I can put it in the freezer, and we'll get it out and use it in either when we have nacho night or when I make enchiladas. It'll be a great option, but that way I know for a fact that this whole container will not go to waste. And then the next project is peaches. My peaches have finally started ripening, so I'm going to have lots of projects with peaches soon on top of eating fresh. But this time I decided to do, which I thought would be a fun treat, is make some peach and cream popsicles. And I'm cooking it down because my daughter actually tried this once, and now she calls it her peach compote. But it is peaches, pumpkin pie spice, and a splash of vanilla, and it's just cooked down. And it cooks down until it's like a jam consistently. And I know some of my children don't like it really super chunky, so I did put it in the blender for a little bit, and I added about half a can of coconut cream that I ordered from Azure Standard, mixed it up, and then I put it into my popsicle molds. I am going to make another batch soon to try it with freshly frozen peaches, so it's a smoother consistency. Some of the children said that they didn't like the chunkiness because it was cooked down versus just some fresh chunked peaches, so I still have to tweak this recipe, but the flavor was really good. Using the pumpkin pie spice with the peaches is like joining summer and fall, and it's a nice warmth of a flavor versus just a fresh summer type peach. So on top of making the popsicles, we have a lot of peach compote that has been made and put in the freezer for winter to have with pancakes and different things. But the popsicle was a hit. We just have to tweak the texture a little bit for the children. And that is all I have for this week's preservation project. My next video will be about freeze drying liver, and next week's I will have another preservation video for you next week.